Thank you, everyone. I am Ryan Ware. I work at Intel. I have been there for most of 22 years fighting the good fight with open source software and security.
Thank you for your patience.
I really appreciate the talk before. I'm hoping that Roz comes into the security tooling working group, which I have recently taken back over to run. I'm really that will let Josh go ahead and continue focusing on SBOM and not have to worry about the broader effort. I wanted to come in today and talk about our experiences at Intel so far using OpenSSF Scorecard. It's funny, a lot of people, they might think, oh, hey, it's Scorecard, it's easy. You just call Scorecard and point it at the repo and you get your scores back out and go figure out what you're going to go do from there. And in a lot of ways, I kind of understand that, but it's more complex than that for us, and I'll explain a little bit why here. I've seen some of my ex-colleagues in the audience, and they might have an understanding of some of the problems that we're going to be facing. Also, I wanted to talk, it's interesting, when I was thinking about this talk, I was thinking about this quote from Real Genius. I don't know how many people have seen this wonderful movie from the 80s. But it's Mitch is there talking to Val Kilmer's character, saying, what are you doing? And Val Kilmer's like, self-realization. I was thinking of the immortal words of Socrates, who said, I drank what? And this experience over the last few months has been a real experience of I drank what from a number of perspectives. We drank OpenSSF Scorecard. It's shown us all of the other interesting things that we depend upon that are problematic in a lot of ways. And so, I wanted to share a little bit about that. And maybe we can all collectively learn from me beating my head against the wall for a while. So, and Krob is sitting over there smiling and nodding because he's been laughing at me for months now. So, this slide, which was just up here a second ago, this is interesting. You all might not necessarily understand how many GitHub orgs Intel has. When I started down this path, I was thinking to myself, hey, I know we have github.com/Intel, and there's lots of stuff going on in there. But how many orgs do we actually have? 3 months ago, we had 92. Last week, we had 94. We keep growing. Yay! And this is a lot. Just trying to figure out what we have has been a delight. And at the same time, I'm sure there are some of my colleagues in other very large organizations like Microsoft and Google who are probably thinking, wait, hold my beer. It's a lot to go deal with. Interestingly, even though we have all of these orgs, partially because some are legacy and partially because some aren't active, we actually only have code for these particular orgs. So you would think, okay, that's great. That might kind of reduce the problem we have. We still have, across the active orgs, something like 6,300 repos. And I'll talk about that in a second. I actually get to remove about 3/4 of that from the discussion for an interesting reason. We'll talk about that. But it's trying to figure out how to take a simple tool like Scorecard and apply it across this whole ecosystem that we have at Intel with our public-facing repos has been a joy. Now, I do want to talk real quickly before I dig into some of the numbers. So, a lot of folks that I have talked to are like, well, this Scorecard, does it really help anybody? Great, there's 18 measurements in there. And by the way, great, thank you for 4.12. Love the release. And actually, I have a very interesting data point that happened just as I started this out. I actually finally went and got data for all 6,300 of our repos, and about that same time, and like literally a day later, got a message, and an external security researcher had pointed to some security problems in some of our repos. And I was able to go look at the data from OpenSSF Scorecard, and yes, the repos that they had pointed us at, they were listed in there as having issues, as having specifically workflow command injection problems. I was able to actually also see that we had other ones that they did not report. And so, us just taking this tool and scanning it, not only did we find actual critical vulnerabilities in some of the things that we had out there, we have the interesting data point that security researchers have found it just at the same time. I don't know if they were using Scorecard. I wouldn't put it past them. They don't want to make their own tools a lot of times. So that was really kind of cool. The data that we were collecting was with the dangerous workflow check, which, by the way, looks for dangerous workflows and GitHub actions and other things. We confirmed the findings on the report, and again, we found additional repos that were a problem. And through this, we've actually found some other interesting security problems that I cannot talk about yet because we haven't necessarily resolved all of them, but we are fixing them with some of the other checks. So if you haven't gone to run Scorecard over your organization, I highly recommend you do so, because you'd rather find out about the problems before somebody else does, and they don't bother reporting them back to you. So my next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about the 6,300 repos and why I'm only focusing on 1,100 of them at this point. And so I don't know how many people have heard of Clear Linux. Clear Linux is a Linux distribution that Intel has created, and there's a number of us who actually have worked on it at some point or another. It is literally the only Linux distribution that Intel has created that I wasn't the security architect for. So that's kind of funny, but although I did give them a lot of input. 5163, that's the number of repos that Clear Linux actually has. And so I am ignoring all of those. I'm focusing on the 1101 that are all of the other repos that Intel has focused on. And it's interesting when you look at the skew of numbers that we're seeing. So this is a bit of an eye chart. I'm glad the screens are big. It's hard even just for me on my little screen here, but this is a logarithmic scale. Most everything is in the Intel org, the main org. There's 484 active repos in there, but we have all sorts of repos strung all across interesting places. I'm a little frustrated that we have orgs that just have one repo in them. It's like, why do we have an org for that? Do we really need to? But we do, and that's fine. But we actually do have some fairly large repos. Intel Labs has their own org for all of their research. Project Celadon, one API source. So there's a good reason why some of these different projects have their own org. But I wanted to share a little bit about the spread of numbers across here, because it's kind of interesting when you take that into perspective when you look at the average scorecard scores across all of these different organizations. When I was first thinking about this, I was thinking that these would actually all probably be very close in number to one another, probably averaging around 4 or 5 or 6 or somewhere in there. But there's actually a fairly significant spread. You look at the Intel NRC ecosystem, which is just 2.0. Fortunately, it's not like there's 80 packages in there that are all need some work. It just has one, so that's good. It's an outlier. But it's interesting also that like the Open AMT Cloud Toolkit, that's like a 7.22. It actually has some significant repos in there. They're doing a lot of good things. And it's just interesting to me that there's different organizations around Intel that their practices are different enough to register in here, and we're able to go work with them to try to go get their scores up. And that's one of the things that we're going to be focusing on at Intel is not only do we want teams to improve their scores, but we want OpenSSF Scorecard scores on their GitHub landing page. So going with the movie theme again, we found some interesting things that I really kind of want to call out. So first of all, on the good side of things, we actually affirmed that Intel, for most repos and for many aspects, they're doing the right thing, which is great. Yay! I think we all understand how hard it is for dev teams to do the right thing. You know, this was great with a lot, you know, this met a lot of my expectations. The bad here, there were some areas that I thought we would score really well on that we should have, that we didn't score well on at all, and we have to figure out how our processes broke down. And these aren't critical things, but you know, for years and years, we have told teams that, you know, if they're going to go publish something, they have to have not only a license file, but a security MD file. Our license file score was like a 1. Yeah, better than 0, absolutely.
0 would have been consistent, though.
Consistency's a plus. And you know, security.md was actually even lower than that on average. And so we were a little bit surprised about that. We realized we must have some problems in our OSPO process, and we're going to be working on that to make sure that those are actually getting into our repos. Now, are those things really security critical, license and security MD? You know, it's nice that Scorecard measures them. I don't think it's you can really reuse code from somebody if they aren't sharing what their license is. I don't think you really want to have a repo out there without having security contact information in it. But you know, it's not like these are things that, if not done right, show a security vulnerability. But it definitely does help significantly. And then we had some really ugly things. We had some repos that we found, including those that had the active security issues, that were shockingly outside of accepted norms, that we had no idea that this was the problem. And again, we don't want external researchers to find these and report them or not report them, as may be. And so, you know, again, I strongly recommend you all go use Scorecard and go try to find, are you having some of these problems? And by the way, if you hadn't used it before because you were like, oh, well, we're in GitLab, so we don't use Scorecard, guess what? You can now. Yeah. And, you know, we also had a very interesting problem, and actually I need to create an issue in the repo about this. We actually had an issue where we have a number of our repos that are based on a Linux kernel. We also have some that actually just have a huge number of contributors. And the GitHub API breaks when you actually go and request what are all of the contributors to this particular code base if you're asking for the Linux kernel, because there's just so many. GitHub API will chug along for like 2, 3, 4 minutes, and then it'll go, no, I'm done. And I actually think Scorecard, if that happens, should just give it a 10. Oh, you broke the API. You're a winner. So that was a little bit frustrating because even though that's the reason it breaks, you still get a -1 return code when you run scorecard on there. So it's a little bit of a pain, but we were able to get around some of that.
I'm sure there will come a PR.
There will come a PR. You are right, sir. So that was kind of a bit of a pain, but it's good. And finally, out of all of this, we've kind of come together with an action plan in, again, a movie theme here. And by the way, those of you that know Star Wars know that there should be a blaster in Han's hand, but this is actually something that was modified by a group called Thumbs and Ammo. So one thing I do want to call out is that Scorecard is becoming part of Intel's standard tooling for making sure that teams are doing the right thing. Do I think that Scorecard is the end-all be-all at this point? No. It is an amazing starting point. There is so much more that I think we can hang off Scorecard as we go into the future. You know, it does currently find significant issues. I do think some of the checks that it does are there because they're really easy to make. Which, great. Is there a license file? That's an easy check. Let's find out. Let's do it. But I really want to start finding out things like, oh, okay, well, we had this security issue reported, whether it was through an issue or some other avenue. And, you know, we were able to get it fixed by this amount of time. What is the mean time to fix for these particular vulnerabilities? You know, that would be a great statistic to find out and have as part of what Scorecard reports out. That's also not an easy thing to go figure out. But it would be great to find out, hey, you know, mean time to fix between this, for this one repo over here is 3 years. That's a problem. But you know, these other folks, hey, their mean time to fix is 3 days. And so, you know, I think that would be a great thing. I think there are many other checks that we should look at and figure out how to get into Scorecard. And I'm definitely not here saying, oh, the Scorecard folks haven't done enough. They've done some awesome things, and I think we all collectively need to help to go figure out what are the new things that we should add in there. Trying to determine, do we use Scorecard infrastructure or roll our own? And this has been something that's been going back and forth inside Intel. What the Scorecard team has done with the OpenSSF infrastructure that has been great. It wasn't working for 3-4 months, however long it was, which it makes it so hard for me to go, hey, just trust them. They're doing the right thing now. And have my Fortune 50 company go, okay, yeah, sure, no problem. Which is kind of frustrating because I think the Scorecard folks are doing the right thing. You know, they also did the right thing by taking things down because they found a security issue with how they were doing it, and it took them a little while to go figure it out. And thank you for some of the limitations from GitHub for their APIs, which kind of made them go down this path. But you know, it's still good that they took it down. But I need to make sure that we figure out, you know, when Intel needs to know what the Scorecard rating is for a particular repo, we can go get it right now. And so I don't want Intel to roll its own. There's no benefit to the community in that. We want to be part of the community and participating in the community. And actually, I have so the 6,000 some odd repos, I got a pull request I'm going to be sending into the scanning tool so that we're actually getting those into the Scorecard database, which is great. I don't want to have to figure out, okay, how do we go create our own database and go create our own one-off solution that isn't going to help anybody. That said, you know, we are going to go figure out which direction we're going to go. I'm hoping we stick with the Scorecard team. And again, there are additional checks that I think are needed. Um, it's been interesting seeing all of the wonderful things that we've been able to collect data on, and it's great when you can actually go to developers and say, hey, look, this isn't just a theoretical issue. This is a problem. And here, by the way, I'm going to go create a pull request. It's going to go take down your system because you have things configured in an insecure manner. I think, there's lots of different tools around in the ecosystem that are doing security things. And I've seen others that are giving security information on repos back. But I think with Scorecard, we have the chance to create a de facto standard for the industry. And we should really push and make this great. There's some things that I think, there's one engineer in Intel who has a very good point where, Scorecard, with its current results, do not really, they aren't predictive of security vulnerabilities in C and C++ code bases that are checked into GitHub. And so I think we need to figure out some checks that go in and go fix that. There are some other things that we need to do as well, making sure that the code quality that is put in is there and good. So I am actually going to be actively working more closely with Scorecard folks in my copious amounts of free time. Although, Crow puts me to shame. OpenSSF isn't even his day job, and he does more than it with me. So that said, I'm really happy Intel's going down this path. I'm really happy that we're using this tool and going to be helping make it better. And does anybody have any questions on pain points that we've been doing? Don't worry, they're getting you the microphone, Stephen, or back there. You'll get it.
Whoa, hello. As someone who's potentially in a decision-making or decision-influencing position at a Fortune 50 company, would Scorecard's publishing an availability SLO help put your mind at rest going forward?
So my personal mind isn't at risk. Having an SLA published would put my management put their mind at ease. That it would help me be able to sell things better. So I appreciate that. That's a great question, and that's awesome. Stephen, do you still have a question?
Yep. Hey, so I've got questions and comments and one thing to write down now. Head of open source at Cisco. I'm also one of the maintainers for Scorecard, and this entire presentation is why I started maintaining Scorecard, because I wanted to use it internally, right?
Right.
And some of the background includes like Google's OSPO uses this as well. So I was going to ask a few questions and leave comments like, have you heard of All-Star?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you using All-Star?
Not yet, but I want to.
Have you seen our roadmap?
I have seen the roadmap, and I saw that. I tried to get feedback internally from all sorts of folks.
Okay, so maintainer annotations are one of the things that's coming, which allows you to circumvent things like the GitHub API limits for large contribution cycles. There was one more.
I would prefer to, if the API breaks, it's, winner.
Yeah, like break. Yeah, great. How are you managing orchestration? Because you're running this across multiple orgs, multiple repositories within orgs.
So that's one of the things that we're trying to figure out right now if we do it ourselves, and I don't want to do it ourselves.
Have you seen Scorecard Monitor? Or
yes.
the Scorecard Visualizer?
I haven't seen the visualizer.
So those are two of the things that we're working on bringing into Scorecard mainstream, right?
That's awesome. I like the idea. I like Monitor. Visualizer I didn't know about. Visualizer will that might help me explain things critically
level,
too. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I think we can get there. But either way, great presentation. We should talk more.
Absolutely. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Kara.
Hi, Kara.
Contributor, code owner for all the .md files in Scorecard. There is an open issue on mean time to update and mean time to fix.
Oh, is there?
I opened it in probably 8 months ago. We got a little discussion about pulling in data from deps.dev, and then it kind of ground to a halt. So if you or anyone here wants to come over, search mean time in the issues, and it should
I will
pop up.
definitely come over and at least throw some uneducated opinions out there. Chaos. Anyone else? Hey, thank you, everyone. I'm not hard to get a hold of, but if you have any questions or anything, feel free. Don't hesitate. And really appreciate this community and everyone being here.